What does a tax lien mean? Well, welcome back. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be answering your question, what does a tax lien mean? Well, it depends upon who you are and where you are, but let's go through this so that you have an understanding of these tax liens. Now, for sure, in most instances, tax liens of any kind create a real negative impression. So stay with me. I'm going to give you multiple sides to this business of what is a tax lien and what does a tax lien mean. So you're going to get quite an education now. So stay with me, okay? Now, before I do that, I want you to understand that I'm a publisher, I'm an author, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a real estate agent, and I'm not a certified public accountant. But I'll try to give you some background that's just from a layman's standpoint so that you understand it. If you need legal advice, you need to talk to an attorney about this. Now, a state notice of tax lien is sure going to be a headache. I can tell you that right now. So if you received a notice from the state of a tax lien, it's time to take action and get that baby resolved right away. A state lien is a legal asset, a legal claim against your assets. Okay, so the state is allowed to seize your assets, and because maybe you missed a tax payment or some other payment that you owed the state money, so that's a tax lien on your personal property or any of your real estate. So that could be a state lien. For example, many states have taxes that you have to pay on your income tax, like New York and California. And if you don't pay those taxes, the state has the right to lien you personally and any property that you own. So that could be a security, that could be real estate, anything that you own they can lien. All right, so they can file that lien, and when they do that, it goes in the county records. So anybody that researches the county records, which someone would do if you applied for a credit card or you try to get a bank loan, they're going to see that lien, and they won't lend you money until you have cleaned that lien up. All right, so resolution should be something that should be immediate. You want to take care of that right away. All right, so what does a tax lien mean? So there could be such a thing as a state tax lien. There could be a federal tax lien, but this program that I'm talking about are tax lien certificates, which are really a positive thing that happened for the investor, but a negative thing that happened for the person that owns the property. So I'm trying to clear that up so that you get that. All right, so if you have a state tax lien, you want to get that cleared right away, okay? They call that discharge to get it off your records. You don't want that. All right, now if the government made a mistake and they put a tax lien on your records, you want to resolve that right away. Otherwise, your credit is going to be absolutely ruined. All right, now that happens to people all the time. So next one I'm going to talk about is we're going to talk about tax lien certificates, which have to do with real estate property in your county. So if you own property in any one of half of the states that sell tax lien certificates, the local county has to do something about collecting taxes. All right, so there's two systems in place. One system is tax lien certificates, and the other is they confiscate the property. Now, I'm not talking about the federal. I'm not talking about the state. I'm talking about the county. So the county wants to collect the property tax, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't pay their property tax. All right, so this is a whole different ballgame than the federal tax lien or a state tax lien. If they file those, that's with the federal government or the state government, and that's something you have to resolve right away, because that's going to ruin your credit. It's going to go in your credit file, and it will stay there until it's discharged. That simply means it's paid for. All right, so more than 30 years ago, I discovered a business that's been around for a couple of hundred years, and it's the business of tax liens and tax deeds. So I really call that a subset of the traditional real estate business. Now, if you go in and check on it, regular real estate is considered homes. It could be vacant residential lots. It could be small farms. It could be small apartment properties. That's the regular real estate business. And of course, thousands of people are employed there doing everything from real estate brokers, or maybe they're agents, or maybe they're appraisers, or title companies, or handymen, or people that do home inspections. So a lot of people work in the traditional real estate. A subset of that, which is called tax defaulted properties. And why do I like that? Well, these are properties that are sold at discounts. Now, how does it get discounted? Well, if people don't pay their tax, the legislature said, wow, you didn't pay the tax? So they're going to do one of two things. The county's going to confiscate the property, or they're going to file a tax lien certificate. Now, tax lien certificates on real estate have nothing to do with the federal and nothing to do with the state. Those are two different taxes. However, in all cases, they can place a lien on the property that you own. All right, so now tax defaulted properties are advertised on the county website, and they're also advertised in the newspaper. Generally speaking, there's 3,000 counties, more than that, more than 3,000 across the United States. They all either do a tax lien certificate auction or a tax defaulted property auction. But half of the states will sell tax lien certificates, and that's what we're talking about now. All right, so now tax lien certificates are filed against the property. Anybody can help you pay your taxes. So the lien is filed, and the county's filing the lien to let everybody in your neighborhood and everybody in the newspaper know that they can come in and pay your taxes. Now, why would they do that? Well, investors will come in and pay your taxes because the county will do two things for them. One, will pay them a generous rate of return, could be 16, 18, 24, 36% interest. So that's a lot of money that they could make on your tax lien certificate until you paid it. But what if you didn't pay it? If you didn't pay it, well, then whoever bought your tax lien certificate, you're gonna lose the property. The consequence of not paying is you're gonna lose your property to the person that paid the tax lien certificate. All right, now investors only do this kind of thing so that they can make generous profits. All right, what's generous profits? Well, that means the state and the county is going to have to establish an interest rate on tax lien certificate. So it starts at the state. They tell the Board of Supervisors and the county commissioners what to do. They tell them, file a tax lien, okay? Once they've filed that tax lien, try to collect the tax lien. If they can't do that, either confiscate the property or sell a tax lien certificate. All right, so until the person pays their tax certificate and pays that interest rate, they're in default. Once they come in and pay it, then they're out of default, and the high interest rate goes to the investor, and the person now has their tax lien certificate back. Okay, so the owner of the tax defaulted property remains on the property. They don't leave the property. However, if the property is sold at auction and they don't pay, when the investor ends up with the certificate, they end up with a property that has no mortgage and no deed of trust loan. How does that happen? Well, the county treasurer cancels the loan that's on the property, so there's no mortgage or deed of trust on that property. Now, millions of certificates are sold across the United States. Now, what are we talking about today? We're not talking about federal tax liens. We're not talking about state tax liens. We're talking about county tax lien certificates, which are sold and people buy and make profits. All right? The profits they make are when the people come in and pay their taxes late, they have to pay 16, 18, or 24% interest. All right, so the certificates are only sold on defaulted properties. And they're sold at auction. It's a public auction. Anybody can go to that auction. You'll know about the auction because it'll be in the newspaper or it will be on the county website, but it's a public auction. Anybody can go there. I live in the state of Florida. They generally have 1 million certificates available every single year. There's half of the states sell tax lien certificates. All right, nothing to do with the federal lien. It has nothing to do with a levy from the state. Those are altogether different things. We're only talking about tax lien certificate. So what is the question we answered today? The question was, what does a tax lien mean? It means it's a levy against that property when it's a tax lien certificate. That means they can take the property or they can issue a tax lien certificate. So you need to understand there's 3 different kinds of liens: federal lien, state lien, and what we talk about here in real estate is tax lien certificates. All right, so that applies to a local county, and about half the counties in the United States are going to sell those tax lien certificates. All right, now I'm going to run out of time. So before I go, if you do buy tax lien certificates, I recommend you look at what you're going to buy before you buy it. Why do you want to do that? Because you want to make sure that the property is there. What if there was a fire? What if there was a hurricane? What if there was a chicken farm next door? You might not want to be buying those properties unless there's really a property there and it's in. You also should think about, if you're going to buy a tax lien certificate, what if the people don't pay? If they don't pay, you're going to end up with the property. Do you want a property that's next to a chicken farm? Do you want a property that's been damaged by fire or been damaged by a windstorm or something like that? Now, my name is Ted Thomas, and right below me, you can find where you can get an auction list, a free auction list. Just go right below me, and you can apply for that free auction list. I'm Ted Thomas.